Hi, my name's Starsky and welcome to From the Studio on Clubbing TV. In this episode, I'm going to take a look at a very vintage synth from 1982. It's the sequential Prophet 600. This is basically a cut down edition of the extremely classic and extremely desirable Prophet 5, but this has been an underdog all its life. It's really got a bad press because the chip that they use inside this was sort of pushed to its limits in 1982. So everything that you've got on this is just a little bit laggy. You've got stepping between the parameters, but actually the sounds of this are absolutely fabulous. They sound pretty much almost as good, or if not as good in some cases, as the Prophet 5 itself. So let's take a quick tour of it, shall we? We've got two oscillators, a single low pass filter, two envelopes, a polymod section like we get on the Pro 1 and the Prophet 5, and I'll show you what that does in a minute. And then we've got the sort of little LFO section. So it's quite basic, but the fact that we've got two oscillators sets it apart from other things from back in the early 80s, like the Juno 106, the Juno 6, the Juno 60, or the Korg Poly 6 that only all had a single oscillator. And that means this polymod section up here really does give us some really dirty and nasty tones. So let's take a look first, shall we, at the oscillators. And these are bog standard sort of analog oscillators that you get in all sorts of things. They're from a chip called the 3340, and Behringer have recently started remaking that chip. It's called the Curtis chip. And we get the standard analog wave shapes on there. We get a sawtooth. Sounds like it needs tuning, doesn't it? We tune it just with this tune button. Then we wait a while for these to all run through A1 to 6, B1 to 6, and then the filter 1 to 6 as well. That's better. So the sawtooth, triangle, and the square. Call it a square, but it's a pulse because you can change the shape of it. And we can do that over here on the modulation section. Get those lovely big fat analog sounding basses, and then we can add the second oscillator. Gets even fatter. Then if we detune that, we get that sort of respace sound. So it really does sound like a nice big old fat analog synth. We've got sync as well. And that gives us that sort of weird screechy sound, which is because we've got it synced to the filter envelope. And when we bring sync in, and it just got a really nice way of doing it. We've also got a unison mode and a chord mode. Put this into chord mode. can turn it into a mono synth doing the same thing. So you just press a single note and put unison on. But only play one note at a time. But take that off. Gets a bit messy. And that's just playing all 6 voices at the same time. We can detune that to make it really demonic. Originally when these came out it'd sound like this, which is just a bit horrible. And the originals couldn't do that, but this is upgraded. It's got what's called the Gleagly upgrade. So we just take a quick tour of what the Gleagly upgrade does. The upgrade brings with it loads of extra things, so many things that I'm just going to read them off a list to you. Things like LFO shape, it's got a vibrato amount. You can change the envelope shapes, so you can have them as exponential or linear or fast or slow. So you get 4 different shapes for each of the envelopes. And the reason for that is because the original ones, the envelopes were just a little bit awful. They just didn't have the resolution and you could hear them just drop out instantly, whereas you can change things on this. And you can change the destinations of the LFO modulation, so it's not the frequency of A and B, you can have A or B, and the same with the pulse width, it can be A or B as well. So loads of little things like that, but it's all accessed via the front panel. And if we look at the front panel, we've got to tape and from tape, and originally to update your presets, you'd use a tape player and you'd play them in through these audios ins and outs on the back. You'd send them to the tape to store them or to back them up, and you'd bring them in from a tape. So you literally press play on a tape recorder, you got all those sort of weird digital tones that you hear on like an old modem, and that would update whatever's in there. Obviously we don't use that anymore, so we access the Gleagly stuff, press into tape, and then we've got all those menus we can look at there. So for example, the shape of the amplifier envelope, we can change that using this knob here, slow, exponential, slow, fast, so it does all sorts of things. And all I'm doing there is changing the response of the envelopes, and it makes a huge difference to the sound. Another thing you can do is change the LFO shapes. See here we've only got a triangle and a square, but the upgrade brings lots more shapes. We can also change things like the response of the mod wheel. So lots of little things in there, but the biggest one for me, I think, is that everything will now respond to MIDI. Previously it was all system exclusive and it was really difficult to get anything to control it. Now there's this controller software for your DAW, and that means you can automate everything from your DAW, so you can really fine tune those tweaks if you want to. And you've also got an iPad app that you can use as well, so really quite nice. So let's move over then to the filters. It's a really simple and standard filter. It's a 24 dB resonant low pass filter. What does that all mean? So you can get some really nice dirty things out of that. And even though this is a poly synth, which are meant to be more polished, this can really sound like a dirty old mono, can't it? And you can hear little bits in that, little sort of bits of noise and things that you just don't get from a VST. Maybe they should start making VSTs sound a little bit more broken. Anyway, we've also got this keyboard tracking on there. We've got off, half and full. When it's on full, the filter tracks the keyboard. So if I turn the oscillators off, and that's the filter, not the oscillators. I can bring in the oscillators. So we're getting 3 voices there. modulating the filter with the polymod section, you can make it even dirtier. So once you've run through this, it's difficult to see why it's got such a bad reputation. But now you've heard what it can do, is it for you? If you really are in the market for a vintage analog poly, this is well worth checking out. It's a bit cheaper than the 106 or the Korg Poly 6. This was around 1,500 euros. It's not good value at all, really, is it? But 1,500 euros is better than a 106. You get the two voices. This is a bit dirtier, 106 is a bit cleaner, the Korg Poly 6 is a bit richer. So they're all slightly different, but this one, underrated, but once you get your hands on one and start playing with it, it's difficult to find any real issues with it. But my recommendation would be the Sequential Rev 2. It's got the same lineage as this. It was designed by Dave Smith, who designed this back in the 80s. It's got similar voices, it's got a similar filter, but it's got a whole load of extra functions, loads more going on, and most importantly, it comes with a warranty. And if you're spending 1,500 euros, you want to get yourself a warranty, really. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, don't forget you can catch it whenever you like on our Clubbing TV official YouTube channel on the From the Studio playlist. And if you've got any questions, drop them in the comments and I'll see what I can do to answer them. And if you are into your synths and your drum machines, check out my Starsky Carr YouTube channel. I've got a lot more in-depth stuff on the Prophet 600 as well. So I'll see you in the next episode of From the Studio.